Excuse me?
I'll start us off here.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Om Jnanati Mirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chaksurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Namah Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachari Nirvishesha Shundavari Pastyatya Deshatari Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pariprajaka Stotra Satashi Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kun Radha Kunikiri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamana Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Hari Bol. Thank you so much, Maharaj, and thank you everyone for being with us tonight for Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayādvaita Swami. It is Monday, July 25th, 2022, and fortunately Maharaj can join us from New Mayapur. And we are reading in the third canto in the 6th chapter, the description of the universal form. Tonight we'll be starting with verse number 18. Very much looking forward to hearing everyone's comments and questions. And if you'd like to lead the closing kirtan, let me know. That would be wonderful. And we're so happy you could join us tonight, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Akendra Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Thank you to all. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tvachamasya Vinirbinnam Vivishur Dishnam Oshatihi Angsena Romhabi Kandun Yar Aso Pratipadyate. When there was a separate manifestation of skin, the controlling deities of sensations and their different parts entered into it, and thus the living entities feel itching and happiness due to touch. Purport. For sense perception, there are two principal items, touch and itching, and both of them are controlled by the skin and hairs on the body. According to Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti, the controlling deity of touch is the air passing within the body. And the controlling deity of the hairs on the body is Oshodhya. For the skin, the object of perception is touch. And for the hairs on the body, the object of perception is itching. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurn Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tathati Shapadantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Shagrajatam Sahagana Raganatan Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye Vansha Kolpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindho Pyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Tvacham Asya Vinir Bin Nam Vivishur Dishyam Oshati Angshena Romapi Kandum Yar Aso Pratipadyate. The universal form is appearing with its different parts. Vinir bin Nam means separated, or as I understand it, differentiated. When there's the development of a child in the womb, the different parts gradually appear, and they're differentiated from one another. At first, we just the process is at the beginning like a pea practically, and gradually the cells divide and get distinct bodily parts gradually, one after another. At so many months this appears, at so many months that appears. So the universal form is gradually appearing with its distinct differentiated bodily parts. And here we have senses appearing, each with their objects and with their own controlling deities. And it's and it's the Lord who's appearing in the form of the cosmic manifestation. And skin, we have two objects of sense. We have touch and itching. Itching due to the hairs on the body, and touch due to the air circulating within the skin. All right, any comments, questions? The same pattern, of course, is occurring for all the different manifestations that are being mentioned, one after another. Medram tasya vinirbinnam swadishnyam ka upavishat retasam shena yena sav anandam pratipadyate. When the genitals of the gigantic form separately became manifest, then Prajapati, the original living creature, entered into them with his partial semen, and thus the living entities can enjoy sex pleasure. Everything is manifested from the personality of Godhead, all the senses and all the objects of the senses. Udam pungso vinirbinnam mitro lokesha ashat payundang shena yena so visargam pratipadyate. The evacuating channel separately became manifest, and the director, named Mitra, entered in it with partial organs evacuation. Thus, the living entities are able and urine. Stavasya vinirvinnav indrasvar patirshat partayam shena krusho yaya vrittim prapadyate. Thereafter, when the hands of the gigantic form separately became manifested, Indra, the ruler of the heavenly planets, entered into them, and thus the living entity is able to transact for his livelihood. Yeah, it's clear. Vritti means the business. Yeah, business when one transacts for a livelihood. Padavasya vinirbinno lokesho Vishnuravishat Katya Svangshena Purusho Yaya Prapyam Prapadyate. Thereafter, the legs of the gigantic form separately became manifest, and the demigod named Vishnu, not the personality of Godhead, entered with partial movement. This helps the living entity move to his destination. This Vishnu demigod turns up now and then in Srimad Bhagavatam in the same capacity as being responsible for movement. Buddhim chasya vinirbinnam bhagisho dishtamavishat bodhenang shena bodhavyam pratipatir yato bhavet. When the intelligence of the gigantic form separately became manifest, Brahma, the Lord of the Vedas, entered into it with the partial power of understanding. And thus, an object of understanding is experienced by the living entities. Hridayam chasya nirbinnam chandrama dishnama vishat manasang shena yena so vikriyam pratipadyate. After that, the heart of the gigantic form separately manifested itself, and into it entered the moon demigod with the partial mental activity. Thus, the living entity can conduct his mental speculations. There's a relationship between the moon and the mind. The moon is the presiding deity of the mind. And even we find that there's some relationship between the phases of the moon and our mental state. Atmanam chasya nirbinnam abhimano vishatpadang karmanang shena yena so kartavyam pratipadyate. Thereafter, the materialistic ego of the gigantic form separately manifested itself, and into it entered Rudra, the controller of false ego, with his own partial activities, by which the living entity transacts his objective actions. Purport: the false ego of materialistic identity is controlled by the demigod Rudra, an incarnation of Lord Shiva. Rudra is the incarnation of the Supreme Lord who controls the mode of ignorance within material nature. The activities of the false ego are based on the objective of the body and mind. Most persons conducted by the false ego are controlled by Lord Shiva. When one reaches a finer version of ignorance, he falsely thinks of himself as the Supreme Lord. That egotistic conviction of the conditioned soul is the last snare of the illusory energy which holds the entire real world. So this is the subtle form of connection with Maya, the false ego, which is presided over by Lord Shiva in the form of Rudra. And the impersonalists who imagine themselves to the Supreme Lord are affected by the last snare of Maya in the form of false identification. We identify ourselves this way and that way, and finally, being frustrated with all these mundane designations, we want to come to the platform of identifying ourselves as God. Yes, Kendra Prabhu.
Thanks so much, Maharaj. There was one sentence in here that I was hoping you might, if you so desired, maybe expand a little bit. He says the activities of the false ego are based on the objective of the body and mind.
Yeah, what does that mean, the objective? I thought about that. It looks to me like it's another way of saying that it's based on the bodily platform.
Mm-hmm.
The gross and subtle bodies. I don't know. I couldn't pick out objective in any objective sense.
Okay. No, thank you. That makes sense.
Anything else? Okay. Sattvam chasya vinirbinnam mahan dishnam upavishat chittenang shena yena so vijnanam pratipadyate. Thereafter, when his consciousness separately manifested itself, the total energy, Mahatattva, entered within his conscious part. Thus, the living entity is able to conceive specific knowledge. Earlier in Srimad Bhagavatam, we saw this relationship between Chitta and the Mahatattva. The Mahatattva is described as almost conscious in one purport. So the Chitta is manifested as the Mahatattva. Or the Mahatattva is manifested as Chitta. Okay. Shirshno Shya Dhyar Tarapadhyam Kam Nabhir Tapadyata Gunanam Vrittaye Yeshu Pratiyante Suradayaha. Thereafter, from the head of the gigantic form, the heavenly planets were manifested, and from his legs, the earthly planets, and from his abdomen, the sky separately manifested themselves. Within them, the demigods and others also were manifested in terms of the material nature. We've seen now the manifestation of the various sensory parts of the universal form of the Lord. And now we're seeing the manifestation of the three planetary systems. The Kam means sky, or here ether. Prabhupada interchangeably renders Kam in that way. Okay.
There's a question in the chat box. Are you able to see that, Maharaj?
If you would read it, that would help me.
Sure. Prabeen says, argument. You say, depend fully on Krishna, yet you depend on medicines, astrologers, and economy. The Hare Krishnas say they do not require anything, yet their members work in the society like others and want to live with our society. They are changing our society against our will, and yet they want to stay with our society. They depend on us, and yet they are brainwashing our children.
Well, there's some fairly, it sounds almost like thrashing of arms here. Various arguments are being thrown out without any particular order. But we depend fully on Krishna, we say, and yet we're dependent on the workings of astrologers and economy, on medicines, dependent on medicines, astrologers and economy. No, if all the astrologers of the world disappeared, we'd go on with our business. We're not depending on them, nor are we depending on medicines. If there may or may not be medicine, we'll carry on. And economy, we're working within your, what's the word, distorted economy. You've created a humbug economy, a complicated economy based on false things, on the production of unnecessary necessities, and the buying and selling of commodities that are even, what's the word, ephemeral or ethereal. The things that are sold are not even things, but they're conceptually manifested or devised as economic instruments. Even your money is just fiat currency. It's declared to be money. In any case, we don't depend on these, but we use them. And even if you think that we're depending on them, so we're depending on Krishna, because it's Krishna who appears as medicine. It's Krishna who appears, Aham Oshadhi, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, I'm medicine. So it's Krishna who's appearing as medicine, as astrologers, as the economy. So even if you think we're depending on those things, we're depending on Krishna. Just here, the universal form. The universal form is, from one point of view, it's material. It's planets. It's senses. It's varnashram constituents. So it appears that it's just matter, but yet we're seeing, by the grace of Shukadeva Goswami, we're seeing Krishna there. We're seeing the personality of Godhead there. So even if you think that we're dependent, even if you say we're not dependent on astrologers, we're dependent on the land. If we had a more natural economy, we'd be dependent on the land, but the land is also Krishna. So even if we're depending on the land, really we're depending on Krishna. And we understand also that the land won't produce anything except by the grace of Krishna. And the land, for production, you need rain. Parjanyata and the Sambhava. The rain is also a manifestation of Krishna. So we're depending on Krishna. Now, what else is in this question? You want to read me the next sentence again?
Sure. The Hare Krishna say they do not require anything, yet their members work in the society like others and want to live with our society. They're changing our society against our will, and yet they want to stay with our society. They depend on us, and yet they're brainwashing our children.
Well, before we get to brainwashing our children, which is another thing, but your society, why is it yours? What gave you the right to say our society? What makes you the proprietors? Even if you take society as being democratic, so we have as much right to our say as you have to your say. Why should the demons have the authority that this is our society and anyone else is an intruder? If people want to take to Krishna consciousness, who are you to say that they shouldn't? That's their business. Not that you say it's our society. Blah, 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 blah. It's finally everything is Krishna's, but again, taking the democratic model, if people want to take to Krishna consciousness instead of your demonic society, tough for you. They're changing our society. Yes, we are. That's our business. And as for brainwashing, that you're just being silly. The whole idea of brainwashing has been thrown out as now. No one takes it seriously as regarding spiritual movements. That idea had some currency for some years, and now it's fallen by the wayside. So you're just clinging to an outmoded, silly idea. These ideas come and go, brainwashing, this, that, but Bhagavatam stays. So rather than reading your silly books about brainwashing and snapping and so on, better to read Srimad Bhagavatam. You'll get more benefit, and it won't. And what you've read won't become outmoded as merely being a passing idea. All right, shall we continue? Are there any other questions, comments? Okay. Achantikena sattvena divam deva prapedide taram raja subhavena panayo ye chatananu. The demigods, qualified by the super excellent quality of the mode of goodness, are situated in the heavenly planets, whereas the human beings, because of their nature in the mode of passion, live on the earth in company with their subordinates. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita 14:14 through 15, it is said that those who are highly developed in the mode of goodness are promoted to the higher heavenly planetary system. And those who are overpowered by the mode of passion are situated in the middle planetary systems, the Earth, and similar planets. Those who are surcharged with the mode of ignorance are degraded to the lower planetary systems, or to the animal kingdom. The demigods are highly developed in the mode of goodness, and thus they are situated in the heavenly planets. Below human beings are the animals, although some of them mingle with human society. Cows, horses, dogs, etc., are habituated to living under the protection of human beings. The word atyantikena is very significant in this verse. By development of the mode of goodness of material nature, one can become situated in the heavenly planets. But by excessive development of the modes of passion and ignorance, the human being indulges in killing the animals who are meant to be protected by mankind. Persons who indulge unnecessary animal killing have excessively developed in the mode of passion and ignorance and have no hope of advancing to the mode of goodness. They are destined to be degraded to lower statuses of life. The planetary systems are calculated as upper and lower in terms of the classes of living entities who live there. The urdvam gachanti sattvastha madhye tishtanti rajasaha jaganya gunavritista adho gachanti tamasa. We find this even on earth, that there are upper class neighborhoods, lower class neighborhoods with different kinds of people living there according to their natures, according to their, you could say, good karma or bad karma. We find in India especially, not India especially, that there are neighborhoods that are just basically shacks. Even in America's certain parts, we have these sort of shanty towns. And then we find sort of middle-class neighborhoods, and then upper-class neighborhoods with vast properties and big mansions and so on. So according to the situation of the living beings, they're placed in where they find themselves in different neighborhoods. So similarly, the demigods have their neighborhood, the upper planetary systems, and for the human beings, the middle planets. And Triganya Gunavritistad Hogachtantitam. So for those in the mode of goodness, there's animal life or life in the lower planets. Adhogat Gunavritista Adhogachtantitam. Triganya Gunavritista, the abominable mode of ignorance. Similarly, Atyantikena, the exalted mode of goodness. The Srila Prabhupada, well, I won't just restate what's already there. Tulsi Priya has her hand up.
Hi, Krishna Maharaj. Please accept my obeisances. So when you mentioned this metaphor, analogy of, sort of neighborhoods people live in comparison to, let's say, the demigods and the human beings. However, we see, let's say in human society, people can live in a very bad neighborhood, maybe, and there's a lot of bad elements, but there will be some pious people who live there. Likewise, there are people who live in very opulent, high-level surroundings, and they're liars, cheaters, rapists, murders, things, all that sort of thing goes on. Maybe not in the same brutal way as you might see in a lower class neighborhood, but it still goes on. So how do we account for people who have and then you hear stories about the demigods, and they, things have happened that are, I'm thinking of Indra. There's bad behavior there. So how do we account for people who are in higher, seemingly higher statuses of life who behave in the lower modes, and people in lower modes, lower statuses who may be more situated in the mode of goodness in terms of their personal behavior?
And on earth, the Prabhupada says that those who are in passion are situated on earth. And there are different, different grades of that. Passion mixed with ignorance in different proportions. And sometimes some goodness is mixed in. No one is just in one pure mode of nature here on earth. Similarly, in the upper planets also, there may be these gradations of higher and lower. And, people somehow or other, it's like someone's in this neighborhood, but what are you doing here? But according to karma, according to destiny, people find themselves sometimes in an incompatible neighborhood. Either they're sort of lower class, but somehow they're living in a higher neighborhood, or vice versa. These things go on, but it's stricter between neighborhoods on Earth and the heavenly planets. For an ordinary fellow from the material world to enter the heavenly planets is not possible. And therefore, again, Srila Prabhupada dismissed the idea that by mechanical means one could go to the moon. I remember seeing the National Aeronautics and Space Museum has an exhibit of the moon landing, and you get to hear real-time recordings of the astronauts landing on the moon. And, they sound like really low-class people. So what are these low-class people doing on the moon? So in Srila Prabhupada's, Srila Prabhupada says, no, they can't go, not just by some jet propulsion. Okay.
Thank you.
Gurudas says, as is well known, Prabhupada would delight in using this term brainwashing for his own purposes in a positive way for preaching. Yes, we are washing their brains of the dirt, of the stool of Mayavadi.
Of the stool of Mayavadi impersonalism, of atheism, voidism, etc.
Yes. Washing their brains. Your brains need to be washed. Yes. Thank you. Saraswati, would you like to read your question? Is Saraswati still with us? Yes, there you are.
Just a second, Maharaj. Okay, Param Pujya Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Are demigods returned to earth due to all their pious acts being used up, or because they are influenced now by the modes of passion, despite initially being in the superior mode of goodness in the heavenly planets?
Well, the Kshine Punya Marcha Lokam Vishanti. In the Bhagavad Gita, it said when their pious activities are used up, then they come back down to earth. And on earth, again, they'll be earthlings with predominant passion and ignorance. So for some time, they got to live as demigods due to their past piety. But when their punya, their pious credit is used up, Marchulokam Vishanti, then they come back here.
Maharaj, if I may, previously we had read that devotional service was classified as pious activities, but I was confused because I thought devotional service and acts in devotional service have nothing to do with the modes of material nature, that it's transcendental. So it was confusing to have read that it was classified as in the mode of goodness.
Do you remember where that is?
Oh, I can't remember now. I thought it was last Monday that we read that.
Okay.
Maybe I can find it.
I found it. It's in text number 11. Maitreya Muni says, actually, it's in a purport. Prabhupada says, the only difference between the demigods and the ordinary living entities is that when the living entities are rich in pious acts of devotional service to the Lord, and when their desire to lord it over material energy has vanished, they are promoted to the posts of demigods.
Sometimes Srila Prabhupada mixes pure devotional service and pious activity, in the sense that devotional service is the most pious activity. It's the most, what is that? Shushusho Shadadhanasya Vasudeva Kata Ruchi Shan Mahatsevya Viprat Punya Tirthanisheva. So the everything becomes punya by some touch of devotional service. So the pious activities have some touch with the Lord. We say that a person is pious in the ordinary sense. That means maybe church going, or they have some morals that they live by. So there's some touch of with God. There's some touch with God, and that's pious activity. Someone's giving cows in charity, or someone's doing something. These are enjoined by the Vedas. People are acting in terms of some scriptural recommendation. So there's some connection with God there, and so we can call this also as some kind of devotional service, but it's different from pure devotional service. It's different from pure devotional service. But pious activities are just on the edge. What is that? Jananam punya karmanam te tvanvamoha nirmukta bhajante mam chadavrataha. Those who are done with sinful activities and are rich in pious activities engage in devotional service with determination. For persons who are very sinful, to become Krishna conscious is more difficult. First, they have to stop sinful activities. Yesham tantakatam papam. And so we have 4 rules: no gambling, no intoxicants, no meat eating, no illicit sex, no sinful activities, and pious activities. So generally devotional service is executed from the platform of piety, but it goes beyond piety. I hope that clarifies things a bit. If those who are, well, Murari Gupta posted something, but I can't, he doesn't have audio, so if someone would read.
He says, Hare Krishna Maharaj, we have extensive information about demigods and where they live, but no corroboration outside of Shastra. Are the demigods avoiding detection, or are we not getting honest accounts from the scientific community?
They don't have to avoid detection. We're not going to detect them. Our scope of understanding, our scope of perception is limited. So we're not able to, the demigods don't have to play hide and seek with us. They live in an area that we're not able to enter. Just as a gross analogy, when you get to the super rich, well, you can't even get to them. You get to the gates of their estate. And, so many, half a kilometer or 2 kilometers within their estate might be their mansion, but you don't even get to past the security at the border. They don't have to play hide and seek with you. They're hidden. You don't have any credentials for entering. Or even in New York City, in the apartment buildings of the wealthy, you can't get past the ground floor and the lobby without serious credentials. So the people who live there, they don't want to be bothered with playing hide and seek with you. They just live in a place that has, of course we live in a place where there's security. In South Africa also, there are whole communities, large communities that are, where the byword is security. They have their own police force, practically speaking. So the residents therefore can roam about in freedom and not worry about intruders and thieves and all of that, because the whole area is encircled by a security blanket, as it were, a security force. So the upper planets are neighborhoods inaccessible to the persons in passion and ignorance. You just can't go there. And so the individual demigods don't have to worry about earthlings and all of that. And apart from that, looking at it from the other side, our senses are so bad. What can we see? We can't see the eyelid, Prabhupada says, which is the closest thing to our eye. And yet we're going to see the demigods. It requires more powerful perception, not available to us. Then Tulsi Priya again, sounds like devotional service is inherently pious, but pious activity is not necessarily devotional service. Yes, but then there can be devotional activities that can be seen from the material point of view as impious, such as gopis leaving their homes to dance with Krishna. That's on the platform of super piety. In the material world, the pious persons are seen to be following religious principles strictly and acting according to Vedic injunctions. But what goes on in the spiritual world, what goes on in Goloka Vrindavan, these are the activities of the super pious. Krita Punya Punja, Srila Prabhupada quotes about the cowherd boys, that what pious activities must they have performed to be now associating with Krishna as Krishna's friends. So the abode of Krishna is the place of the ultra pious. The ultra pious. And there, the standard of piety is not Vedic injunctions and all of that. The standard of piety is absolute dedication to Krishna, which is the ultimate piety. Here, just to sort of bring one toward devotional service, we have some rules and regulations to regulate our tendency for impious acts, so that gradually we can advance toward devotional service to the Lord. But the gopis, the cowherd boys, the Nanda Yashoda, all the inhabitants of the spiritual world are situated, first of all, in pure goodness, and second of all, in pure devotional service. They're all situated, their standard of pious activity is it considered pious or impious according to public opinion or Vedic injunctions. Their standard is that it's pleasing to Krishna, the absolute truth. They're not situated in relative piety or impiety. They've transcended all that, or they exist on a platform transcendental to all that. their standard of piety is whether Krishna's pleased. Whether Krishna is pleased. And for that, and the example is there, Maharaj Yudhisthira, who lied. But that lying was better than being a mundane, moral, and truthful person. So the piety found in the spiritual world, or what appears to be impiety, from our point of view, is super piety. It exists on a platform beyond the dualities of pious and impious found in the material world. But we confuse the thing, and therefore we think that the business of the gopis with Krishna is something like what goes on here. It's not. What goes on here is sense gratification, and what goes on there is pure devotional service performed within the internal energy of the Lord.
Maharaj, I just wanted to add also, like I was thinking, as you were saying that, I was remembering the pastime of Gopinath Patanayaka in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And if I recall correctly, he was misappropriating funds from the government, and Mahaprabhu said he was spending it on dancing girls. So that wasn't something that was directly for the service of Krishna, but it seems that he, simply because he was a devotee, even though there were some discrepancies in his behavior, it wasn't, he wasn't, because of his connection to the Lord, that wasn't considered so much. It seems like there's maybe more instances of that where devotees don't behave. I mean, maybe it's because we have such a hard time, and when I say we, I mean me, of behaving properly, of behaving morally, of behaving virtuously. And then you see that some devotees, and they're pure devotees and very attached to the Lord, they behave improperly. And we're like, wait a minute, that's not fair,
Tejiya samna doshaya. In the super powerful, there's no consideration of such faults.
Mm-hmm.
What's legal for the king of the gods is not possible for the cow.
Mm.
So the standard of the standards applied to the ordinary living beings don't apply to the special internal associates of the Lord. But that doesn't mean that we should abruptly imagine ourselves to be on that platform.
Mm-hmm.
Then we wind up in the soup.
Like you said, Maharaj, in Bhagavad Gita, aprichit duracharo.
Bhajate mam sadhureva. Generally, the devotees act piously, but even if it's sometimes seen that there's some discrepancy, no, he's still a sadhu. Samyak vyavasito is and then Kripram Bhavati Dharma. So of course that's within the context of activities here, but yes, the devotional service is so strong that it overpowers these things. But then we have the defense against the namnan baladyasihi papabhuti. If we think that on the strength of chanting, now I'm pure and I can do anything, and Krishna will, it will be all right, or Krishna will, what's the word, sort of indemnify me. I've got a license to do anything because I'm chanting Hare Krishna, or I can chant Hare Krishna and not suffer the results of whatever sinful activities I perform. Then that's a sinful mentality. Yes, Priya.
Oh, okay. I just wrote in the box. So how do we know if someone is actually a pure devotee and not just posing as one to facilitate their sense gratification?
Well, Krishna will know. You may or may not know. There are, we get directions from the acharyas how to know, how to discriminate from the shastras, from the acharyas. But even if you get it wrong, Krishna won't get it wrong.
Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we have a little kirtan?
Yes, Maharaj.
I've been missing your kirtan, Mahesh Pandit.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Jai Om Mishnupad Punamunsa Paripajrakacharya Stotra Shri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath, Shama Kund Radha Kunikidi Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadip Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Jamana Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you so much, Mahesh Pandit Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Lakshmana.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
So, Maharaj, where is this new Mayapur?
New Mayapur is in France, our farm project. Srila Prabhupada himself visited New Mayapur during his time. We have a big castle here and large property. And His Holiness Jayādvaita Maharaj has been working here for the last several years to rebuild what was really a devastated project, and it's coming up. There's devotees, there's kirtan, and there's renovating the castle. They have right now the municipality has asked them to do all sorts of things, really necessary things for renovation. So they need a lot of money at the moment, about $600,000. So charitably disposed persons looking for a worthy cause, here it is. And we look forward to seeing further development here. His Holiness Bhakti Chara Maharaj also invested considerably in helping New Mayapur. And that's a quick place. The nearest train station is a place called Shataru. So if you look it up, EAUX, Shataru. French spellings confound me.
Hare Krishna Gurudeva, Gaura Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Kantiya.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Maharaj, are the drawings behind you? Are they from a local artist?
I don't really know. I haven't looked at them carefully. Don't really know.
They're quite good.
There were New Mayapur for some time was the home of the BBT art department. I don't recall exactly when, but the artists for some time were, or at least there were artists here at New Mayapur illustrating Srila Prabhupada's books.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Srila
Thank you,
Prabhupada
Kendra.
ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Thank you, Maharaj. Jayādvaita Maharaj ki jai.
Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Okay.
Gaur Premanande.
Thank you.